And we're live.
And we are live. Um,
So,
I'm I'm a
Chris,
little sick. Yeah.
you're feeling sick because of the match in the World Cup, or?
Oh, yes, my heart's broken in two. No, I'm not a super big soccer fan. I think I represent the U.S. like citizenship pretty well there. Where I mean, I don't even know how you play it. Like my girlfriend's Colombian, and she tells me like, "Oh no, that's what's happening, and here's what's happening." So I don't know, but it's
So you
still
don't know
it's
what offside is.
no. Well, yeah, I do because we have that in hockey, but I don't know a single player. But what usually happens is this first round happens and then they get into this tournament style and then by then you've kind of connected with a couple people. We have a really popular thing in the US called March Madness, and it's college basketball. And the styles of teams are so different that it really makes for compelling matchups. And lots of times you'll know the top five players maybe, and you'll know your college that you went to or something. But other than that, you don't know. But then you start connecting and recognizing different players as the tournament goes along. And so that's what I find myself doing. It's like, oh, there's that Colombian dude that scored that one goal 2 days
Right.
ago, that kind of thing. So I'm glad the U.S. made it because then it's more fun to follow if you have a team, someone to root for, right?
Totally.
And then we're thinking if we're in Colombia when they win the if they win the World Cup, holy smokes, it's gonna be crazy here because it was crazy after one win. So
Yeah.
should be
Yeah.
should
What was a little bit hidden behind all the, excitement for the World Cup was another event, which is the Google I/O conference, which is yearly.
hmm
And I think we're going to do an entire episode about it, but maybe we can tease it a little bit. So, is there anything that have you actually like looked at it yet, or
Yeah,
have you seen
I
it?
looked at the overview. I haven't watched the 90 minutes. It's funny because boy, if they would have gone before Apple, some of the things would have been really cool. But they went after Apple, and it's like, oh, Apple just announced that. There's a couple things like that where like Android and Chrome working together better, or other things like that they announced. I'm trying to think if something really jumped out, and I don't. Maybe it's because I'm not feeling well and I'm not all there, but nothing really jumped out to me as
Mhm.
being, oh my gosh, that's so cool, that's so amazing. It's
Yeah.
more of just the wearable stuff they talked about. I don't know. For me, the Apple one was like, wow, this is really cool stuff, and the Google one was, okay, whatever.
Yeah, that's exactly the same feeling that I had as well. So there was nothing really crazy, nothing really special. On the other hand, you have to admit that a lot of the stuff that's crazy and special about the Apple keynote is something that is already present in Android for a long time. So yeah, I'm kind of split on it too. But
What's that? What are you talking about?
yeah, so a lot of the stuff we found exciting, like the replaceable keyboards or the
Oh,
inter
right.
APIs, all of that, that's already
Yeah,
in Android since version 1, basically.
yeah.
So, on the one hand, we get excited about stuff when it's announced by Apple, and on the other hand, we don't get excited about stuff that's already beyond that when Google announces it. So, I don't know if we have a bias there or not, but yeah, my first response was the same. It's like, okay, some interesting items in here, some big wins for the web, definitely. But other than that, no grand changings, no earth-shaking details for especially us developers and publishers.
No new
Uh,
programming language or anything, right?
yeah, but let's go into more depth on another episode, I guess.
Yeah, yep.
Anything else you
Um,
want to cover from past week?
Well, I think we had a pretty good week of actual uh, published episodes. We had Dave Baggett, who we both found super interesting, and I think he had a really good time on the
Yeah.
conversation. Then Oriole came and had a different perspective um, and I think that his perspective still stands. TechCrunch came out with another article saying, "Hey, it
Mhm.
looks like these things are going through," and Vungle sent out a note to its partners, like its publisher partners.
We
Um,
got it first on the
yeah,
podcast.
yeah. But I don't think that story's done yet. And Oriole actually asked some good questions in the TechCrunch comment saying, hold on, are they saying that less are being denied and they're still being denied, or are none being denied?
Yeah.
And um, I,
Yeah,
I
it's
think it
like
just, go ahead.
I think we use TechCrunch from time to time as a source, or at least as making us aware of something that's happening, but you can't really take it as, quote unquote, real journalism. They are just about the newest, the hottest, the shiniest headlines, and they don't really dig in deep and make, do research or anything like that. So I think Oriel's criticism, or at least skepticism here, is well grounded. So we'll have to wait and see more data, especially. But still, I like the controversy here. I like that we can see different opinions playing out, and I see both sides. I personally still tend to more of the Wangle position, just because would be such a dumb move for Apple. But
yeah,
that doesn't mean that Oriel's wrong. It's just like some serious skepticism is probably needed.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And it's funny because I think the middle episode was like our favorite blogs or favorite podcasts or something like that, and it's like seems so out of place with $750 million Mr. Baggett. And
it wasn't the Amazon Prime phone. Is
oh,
episode
okay,
49.
so that was pretty good.
Was okay. Was okay.
Yeah, maybe I'm thinking of last week. There was one recently where it just stood out, where it's like, dude, that does not.
That was 46. Yeah, that was a little bit out of the ordinary, but maybe the listeners can give us feedback whether they thought that was appropriate for the podcast or not.
And again, having 3 a week helps us be able to like indulge ourselves with some of the other, like, not everything has to be news. If we're going to try to be breaking news, we're not equipped to be good at it. So,
and we can be braver when making experiments. That's what I like about the format as well, because we don't need to be sure that the episode is really great for this week, because there's all this overwhelm building up then, and so we can, let's just say that
tomorrow. Yeah,
let's just say the podcast episode wasn't that great. Okay, if we notice that that's the case, then we'll learn from that, but we don't have to be scared up front, because we know the next one is just around the corner.
All right. I think we had, so usually we record on Thursdays. Today's Friday if you're listening to this on the podcast, and but it's live on Google Hangout right now. And usually record on Thursdays. I was feeling too crappy to record, but man, do we have a lot to talk about between the Google I/O stuff. I think a subject that keeps coming up over and over and over again in different ways is masterminds. You and I have been in a couple masterminds that have been very good, both together, and I thought maybe it'd be good to go over, you and I already talked about this, go over the what makes a good mastermind, and like best practices, or whatever we're calling it, helpful hints, whatever we want to call it, but like a framework or tips or however we describe it to make a successful mastermind. Because I think a lot of people are struggling with finding, like, recreating the magic that somehow we found twice in a row. And I want to say somehow, because Patrice was instrumental in like putting it together, but it also depends a lot on the personalities involved. And I mean, it just worked. Like, it just worked for 18 months. And I know that I wouldn't be in the same place I am now if I didn't have this mastermind that works so well. And so I think a lot of guys are craving what we had, that experience, but aren't being able to recreate it in some of the options they have. So I don't want to get into like hosting masterminds, but I think maybe just an episode talking about here's what we think works best, and try to see if you can't frame your mastermind this way, and maybe that will help.
Yeah, let me ask a question there. You just sold the first round of your App Business MBA program on the webinar on Wednesday, right? And that will also be a place where you can not just get video content and tutorials, all of that kind of stuff, but it's also a place for those members to hang out, right? Do you think that would make sense to have a mastermind within that program?
Maybe, yeah. So there's the difference between the MBA and some of the other things is that there's $1,000 price to enter. Now, what I'm selling isn't mastermind stuff, but it creates this filter where only people that are serious about it are going to pay the $1,000, and only people who have paid the $1,000 are now going to be in this group. So you kind of have two filters there: serious and paid. And and so I'm modeling a lot of this off of a group we joined, Podcasters Paradise, so we could learn how to make the podcast better. But then they have a Facebook group that has hundreds of members that are very active, and there's several posts a day. And it's cool because it's everyone in there who's posting. The bar is set high because everyone's got a podcast. It's none of this, oh, I want to build a podcast and I'm researching it. It's like, no, you're on episode 50 and you're sharing what's good and what's bad. I mean, everyone has so much room to improve, even the number one guy. So everyone's sharing. I could see something like that happening here, but you know how I am, dude. I don't want to get distracted with other things. So it's kind of like a couple people have asked. In fact, I think Kevin's one of them that asked. Kevin's in the chat, in the chat here. Like, is there going to be a forum mastermind community thing? And I just don't want that to be what I focus on in the early time. I just want to get a bunch of content out there and keep focusing on adding new content and getting great guests every week, like 10 videos and a new guest, you know?
Yeah, but if you're in that group, if you're in the MBA program, then you can see and communicate with the other members.
Yes.
So you could take that episode, the podcast episode we might do, take those rules, contact those members, and self-organize your own mastermind with a pre-existing filter, which I think is one of the crucial parts when you want to put together a successful mastermind, is having one of those filters. So,
I think so too.
I think it's a good opportunity to get even more value out of that App Business MBA.
Yeah, I think so too. I think the easy thing is to throw up a Facebook group, just like we have for the App Business podcast, and let people kind of self-organize into groups there. And I'd be happy to like say, hey guys, everyone's talking about masterminds. Here's a document. Go find some partners. I just don't want to have to like organize. I'm not good at admin stuff. Like, oh, hey, this guy wants it at 9, and this guy wants it at 10 in Vietnam, and like, forget that. It's better anyways if it's self-organized. It's one of those things that just work better if you're doing it yourself.
Totally.
You know? So, so I think that would be a good topic, and I think you're right. I think the MBA is going to be good for that. And by the way, that was really fun on the MBA. Totally. If that was my 10th webinar, oh, shame. But the first one, there were some difficulties, like the chat role, the thing we use right here for this for the App Business Weekly. It only accommodated 10 people, and I didn't realize that until there were 50 people on there, and it kept flashing at me like full or something. And so I had to go out while I'm talking to people and welcoming them. I'm putting in my credit card information to like buy the monthly subscription for 100 people, and just little things like that. It just was definitely the first one. But that's, I had to remind the listeners, look, that's why it's an $800 discount, because it's the first one. It's not polished yet.
Yeah, and people always say the first step is the hardest step, and it shows. When you see all those polished products or the polished webinars or whatever, then you think the first step must be easy, but that's only because those people have done it so many times, right? You can see it with the podcast as well. I mean, that's one of the downsides with the podcast, that everybody can go back to the first episode and check out how you did. So
I listened to some of those recently because we were doing transcriptions for the website, and I forget what else, but I think it was like onboarding Hazel, right, and saying, hey, here's all our stuff, go back here and do this, and holy smokes, were we bad at the beginning. Like, I mean, the thought, it's not like we're so much better, oh my gosh, listen how good we are. It's not like that. It's just, I think we've crystallized, or we're getting better at who we are, what our role is when we're talking to each other, and what we're trying to do, and all this kind of stuff. We've gotten better at having 30-minute talks with each other and all that kind of stuff. So
and it's the same with like every other skill. At least for me, it's like when I go back 6 months, look at my code, it's horrific. Like it's horrible. So I consistently have this feeling of progression. At the same time, when you look back, it feels like, how bad were you at the time? So I think it's very natural to have that feeling, and shouldn't hold you back from starting, especially.
If that's the one thing about being an entrepreneur, if you're afraid to fail, then you're not going to be a good entrepreneur, because it's littered littered with failure. Even the
Yeah,
successes are failures, you know.
the only real failure, in my opinion, is thinking that now you know, and back then you didn't know. That's exactly the wrong kind of mindset. It's like, well, now you know, but in 6 months you will look back and you will think that you didn't know, right?
Hmm.
So it's always progressing, and there is no state of success or failure. Like there's no state of
Yeah, I
doing
see what you
good or
mean.
doing bad. Really, it's all relative to how you progress, and the only failure is uh, either not progressing, and that's connected to the other failure, which is thinking that you're already so smart or you already have made it, because then you stop making progress.
Yeah.
So I think that's the takeaway.
Well, we got 10 paid members so far, and the thing ends tonight at midnight, or I don't know when the code ends, maybe 9. But anyways, I put it for Friday, and it doesn't have a time, so I'm assuming it's like midnight. Um, so the goal was 5. I thought, okay, if 5 people sign up for this thing, then that's like a good enough thing. That's a good enough number for me to say, okay, I'm going to go dedicate the next 30 days and most of my time to crafting out all this content and getting it all there. And it's not just like, it's not all on the top of my head. It's a lot like the podcast where we have to do some research to make sure we've got the latest information, right? We have our experience and we have what we've read 3 months ago, but so, and then there's a ton of bull crap stuff like editing and all that stuff. So I decided, okay, 5's the number, and we've got 10 so far, and if 50 people showed up out of 120 registrants, that's a huge attendance number, or pretty good. 50% is a pretty good number for that. So all the numbers kind of seem to point to, okay, even if this was like people who knew me from the show or knew me from around life, um, that's still okay, you know. And but I got 10, so 10 is good, and um, yeah, we'll see. Maybe, who knows? Maybe by the end of the day, it'll be 15, and then I can not worry about this stuff for a while, and all I have to do is go. Like I'm not hosting another webinar for 2 weeks, and all my Facebook ads need love, and there's so much to improve, like you're saying.
Yeah.
But it's enough for me to say, okay, I'm going to do this, and it'll be awesome to do it, number one, and then be two, to have like a really cool product all of a sudden that is kind of tied to the podcast and is like a new group, similar to how we enjoy the Facebook group for App Business Podcast. It'll be a whole new group of people that are coming in and interacting with us. So, yeah, a secret Facebook group. I agree. I'm with Kevin.
Yeah, let's quickly go back to the thought here, because we were chatting in the live chat here, and for the listeners that listen on this not live but on the podcast, we were talking about whether it would be a good idea to have masterminds, and good faithful listener Ryan Kelly was suggesting that he thinks it's better to support already existing groups than build our own mastermind. And I just want to make clear that I do agree with that. I don't think that there's anything wrong with masterminds we already have, like Mobile 10x or App Masters. But as we just said, a big portion of mastermind is the filter. And I don't know about App Masters, but Mobile 10x, do they charge now? I don't know if they even charge for membership now. But if they do, it's not particularly high. So I'm not saying there can't be good masterminds. In fact, the mastermind which Chris and I did was born in Mobile 10x, right? So it was a great mastermind. But for some people who want to have that filter in place and who are already buying the Mobile 10x, the App Business MBA anyways, it might make sense for them to interconnect and build a mastermind just because they already have established that. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with App Masters or Mobile 10x, but if you already have that group in place, why not use that to interconnect? And it's just a suggestion. So if the people in there want to do that, I think it's a great idea. But if they don't want to do that, then they don't have to.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a tough one. Masterminds are tough just because I've been in a couple that were terrible, and it's only because my personality is like screw you guys, I'm going home, is like, I
Yeah, it's
just don't have
pretty.
any patience for people not getting stuff done, or like I would
Mhm.
go and get, I think even Steve helped me out because had 150 episodes. He sent us like all these ideas of what to do for the podcast, how to, like a getting started guide, and I brought it to the group and like no one even responded. It's like, dude, you guys, so guess what? Like 2 of the 8 people started podcasts because 8 of them or 6 of them were pretenders. So it's when you have weak links, it does a lot of damage because it just takes the wind out of the people who are making stuff happen. So yeah, I was lucky to like recognize early on that these particular masterminds were duds and get out. But man, when you're in a bad mastermind, it's not worth your time. I mean, it's negative time. So yeah. Well, hopefully we can help maybe with a discussion, and then I'd love, if you guys have got something going on in one of these other groups, like David saying, I'd love to hear that you guys are like solving that problem. And then, yeah, who knows? App Business MBA might provide another place to like connect with people. I'm sure it
Yeah,
will.
but just
I know it will.
to make it clear, none of us wants, like, neither you or I want to be the host of a mastermind or spend our time on that. It's just a suggestion to the listeners or the people in that MBA program that they could um, self-organize in that way.
Self-organize, yeah.
Yeah.
Some other topics that you had written down for. So again, usually we've already recorded the podcast, but we haven't yet. So we'll probably record tomorrow. I don't know. David and I haven't talked, but um, some of them are obviously from my presentation for the App Business MBA. It like sparked some ideas and thoughts for full-on discussions, and I totally agree. Where
Yeah,
I
I wrote.
dedicated 2 slides to it. Why not have a 30-minute episode? Some of my favorites that you kind of took notes and started kind of outlining were, you seem so bullish about mobile. What are the risks? Because I
Hmm.
had a slide saying, hey, I need to slow down this love fest. It's like mobile is so great, so great. Let me talk about why it's not so great. Um, that would be a totally great 30-minute episode or conversation, um, because we do talk about the potential, and it's like the failure series. We need to talk more about risks and what's obviously not so great. Uh, the other one you have is, how big exactly is the mobile opportunity? We talk about that a lot in our quarterly reports, but our quarterly reports, even though they're some of David and I's favorite episodes, they get the worst downloads. Like people don't care. I think we should still keep doing them, but
It's good
people just
for
don't
us
like
because
them.
we get a lot of background knowledge and stats and all that kind of stuff, which we then later often mention and often recite in other episodes with other topics where we can bring that background knowledge to the episodes. But the raw data and just crunching the numbers just doesn't seem to resonate, which I can understand. Audio might not be the best medium for that.
Okay, yeah. See, I love it, but that's audio where you and I are looking at the same document and stuff.
Yeah.
Um, but so I used a bunch of Mary Meeker's latest report, and she's got a really famous annual report that she does, and was released a couple weeks ago, and just new takes on where mobile's going and the opportunity. And she's not like a mobile first person; she's like internet first person, and mobile just keeps becoming a bigger and bigger part of her report because it's a bigger part of the internet. And so that would be a really good conversation. Was there something else? Maybe it's just those two that came out of it. Um,
Yeah.
but so I think we have some uh, good topics that we can hit up over the next couple days, or maybe we do it tomorrow, uh, because I think these are also conversations that David and I will have together and learn something, because I don't know what David thinks about this stuff, and he has an idea what I think about it, but getting into the conversation, I'm sure will shed some light on some new things. So that'll be fun to do.
Yeah, totally. Looking forward to oh yeah, all of those episodes we have still to record. There's so much more stuff we can talk about. I just started taking notes while watching the recording of your webinar, and I at some point I stopped taking notes because it was too tedious. But there's much more that we can talk about that comes out of this App Business MBA. So
Yeah. Um, and Ryan mentioned something here, and now Kevin is kind of weighing in also on the chat. But it's absolutely true. Tyler and I talked about 2 weeks ago, and I said, dude, just tell me when you're ready to come on, kind of like a Vungle or Oriole thing, where it's like, come on and talk to the community about what's going on with App Review Me, because that's another one in serious turmoil. And the poor guy, I think he's just been like putting out fire so much
Yeah.
that it's like, dude, let me just get my head on straight so I can like figure out what the complete story is. Like I think the story is evolving, and so he'll come on and then he'll change. So that was 2 weeks ago. So I wrote him yesterday again and said, dude, come on the podcast, because you should. His Facebook group, like I think he's gonna have to pivot because Apple changed the way they were interacting with his service. But a lot of indie devs use his service, so yeah, we need to get Tyler on. Is basically my point.
So you don't have any background knowledge right now that we could share?
I wouldn't want to do it without Tyler. No, I don't have anything
Okay.
from Tyler. No, it'd just be my speculation. But also, I
Okay.
figure, yeah,
Let's
I
get
don't
him
know.
on as soon as possible.
Yeah, well, I'm
So
trying. It's like, will he say yes? So. Uh, I think the big thing is it keeps changing, and he doesn't want to come on and be like give the wrong
yeah.
information. He's just gonna have to sit here for 3 days and like keep talking with us. So um, yeah, but I know everyone wants to hear from him, and I think maybe he's just trying to figure out what's going on himself and
Yeah.
maybe put a stamp on it one way or the other, and maybe he's not ready to put that final stamp on it yet. But
Chris, my foreign language skills seem to let me down. Ryan is asking a question. I just don't get it.
mhm.
Maybe you can decipher it.
Okay, which one?
So the question is, now that I think that AppsFire has changed, where can someone go to see if there are other apps that are already available? Like, what do you think that means?
Um,
Like, what apps are available and what change of AppsFire? Maybe Ryan can elaborate, but I know there's some delay in.
I'm sure that's what it is. Oh yeah, there's like a minute delay. I found that out also
Mhm.
on Wednesday. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know. Uh,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
AppsFire changed a while back. So Oriole changed this like 6 months ago or 3 months ago. So
Right.
it's been a change for a while. So I'm not really sure.
Hmm.
All right, so I guess that's really kind of what we wanted to hit. David, what else did you want to talk about? I mean, Google I/O would be a long conversation, and if we did it like we did the Apple Developer Conference, we would have like this whole hour-long thing. But personally, I'm not prepared. I've been sleeping since it
Yeah.
was happened. So
No, what
I
I would
think,
like to do is
yeah,
just stay around a little bit for questions and answers.
okay.
And I know it's a little hard because of the delay. It makes it not really easy for us, but I think we got a lot out of the questions every time on the weekly live here. And
Hmm.
so I would love to be answering some more questions if you don't mind.
Now, another question that I was getting on the Business MBA webinar was idea validation, those kinds of things. And it was weird because I know what I do, but I don't have an SOP for it because I don't have a VA do it. I go do it. If I were SOP around key trends and top monetizing apps and all this kind of stuff, but that's not where I am. And I mean, I'm already completely over my quiz apps that I have. I'm really excited about the Macaron Mania stuff and like the harder, bigger apps that we're doing. So I've just stopped thinking about it like, what's that little sliver of opportunity where I have 2 weeks to act, and what are the bigger, like I look in
Hmm.
6 month trends, I don't look at 6 day trends. So I think a lot of people still think in the 6 day trend thing, like, oh, what can I do? What can I do? And I don't think that's how the funny thing was I didn't have a good answer for the guy. And I said, well, it depends on the app. And I told him, I said, you know, I think this is a bigger answer, and we'll have videos in there. But it was a weird thing to be put on the spot with something like that because I couldn't figure out what the friction was. But I think that's the friction. The friction is, I think a lot of people are trying to find little opportunities in these 2, 3, six
Yeah.
day, 2 week windows. And I've just stopped thinking like that. And I think that's kind of the point I was trying to make about the App Business MBA is like, look, this is a ginormous opportunity. doesn't happen. This happens once in a generation where something comes along and changes the way everyone interacts with everyone else, how they pay for things. It changes how you do healthcare.
Yeah.
And it's showing. It's not like this is some speculative thing. All the numbers are supporting this massive change to mobile and smart devices like that. And yet people are trying to find windows for 2 weeks and 3 weeks, and it's like, guys, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about building a business that you can that lasts a decade, or building a business that you can sell in 2 years and build the next one and the next one, and the next one. And I don't think that the guys who are getting rich on reskinning are guys like Carter and Elaine and the people flipping the designs, like Angela's App Service. Those are the people getting rich. I don't know how many of their people who have bought the code have done really well. I'm sure there's some that have done okay, just by law of averages, but the people who are making all the money there are the people selling the selling the pitchforks, selling the shovels, and that's just not what the App Business MBA is about. I mean, it will help you treat your reskinning business more like a business, but it's more for someone who's thinking, okay, here's a huge opportunity. I could build a business over the next decade, or I could build 10 businesses over the next decade. How do I move into that trend? And it's almost like, gosh, it's so far from what everyone's talking about. It feels like it's foreign, but it's not. It's like a normal way to evaluate a business opportunity. It's just we're drowning in internet marketing bullshit, and we never cuss on the show, but it's true. It just drives me crazy. So yeah.
Yeah, totally.
So that was my long rant to say I think we should take longer looks at the time frame and the opportunities, and when we evaluate apps, not look at like these little windows, which I think is part of the disconnect. I think if you're trying to look in a little window, then it needs to be like this process and like the system. Yeah. But there's simple, obvious ways to evaluate opportunities that have longer lifespans. That don't involve Oh, go ahead.
That leads us to the question in the chat,
Okay.
because I think that the methods and tools to evaluate those opportunities aren't that different compared to any other business. And Ryan was asking you specifically, can you recommend the top business books you would recommend for someone new to business and entrepreneurship?
Yeah, and that's part of it is because Brian and I talked like last week, and I said, dude, you got to read some of these books. And I told him how much I was reading when I first started.
Yeah.
And I've got an MBA, and I was a business major in college. So like I would say most of what I've learned about business though hasn't been from the MBA or the business degree. It's been from reading like a madman. I just finished a really great book, The Entrepreneur Mind. You know what? I got my Kindle right here. I'll be right back. I'm gonna grab it.
Great. Yeah, that's the cool thing about being live and casual like we are. So Chris will be right back.
Cool today? Yeah, I don't feel well.
The Lean Startup is pretty good. Totally good. I can recommend. I wasn't asked, but I can recommend Build to Sell. Along with the Lean Startup. That's both great. Don't take those as Bibles. That's pretty important, I guess. With all business books, there's good things in a lot of the books, but don't take it as gospel.
Yeah, the two we talk about. Yeah, real quick, the two we talk about on the show a lot, and that seem to resonate across entrepreneur land, is Built to Sell, because it really encourages people to stop thinking about trying to do everything themselves. And what was the process one? What's the process one?
That's
Work the System. Yeah, that's another great one.
Yeah, we were just saying Lean Startup and Build to Sell, but Work the System is great for personal productivity, which I think totally influences how you work as well, is getting things done. It's a classic. But Chris, you were asked what you think is great, so Why didn't you walk us through your Kindle?
So I would say if you're brand new at some of this stuff, like you don't have a business background at all, you've never taken an accounting class, anything like that, I would say I just finished The Entrepreneur Mind, and the guy's my age. His name's Kevin Johnson, I think. He's my age. I think he's 35, and he was kind of been one of these guys who's been releasing. I think what it was is, oh, he had a magazine app at his, or a magazine, online magazine for his college, and that like started his first business. But I just was like nodding my head in agreement with some of the things he was saying, and then in other things I was learning. So I mean, I just found it really great. It's called The Entrepreneur Mind. Oh yeah, Kevin Johnson. The Entrepreneur Mind is outstanding. And then there was another one that I started, and I found that I um, already knew everything he was talking about, but I agreed with his approach. It's called something like the Business MBA or something. Uh, the Personal MBA, Master the Art of Business, and it's another one of those where he takes all these other books, right? Because you could start with the Blue Ocean Strategy, and you'd get something out of it. You'd get Built to Last. You could buy that and read that. But for the most bang for your buck and time, I would say those two: the Personal MBA, Master the Art of Business, and that first one I said, the Entrepreneur Mind, I think it was called. I mean, I'm looking through my Kindle, and there are some awesome books in here for business. And then also, I've been doing this for a while, so I read a lot of stuff like more niche stuff. But like right now, I've got a whole bunch of Facebook ad books because I was advertising the App Business MBA. But I think those two are great places to start. For just general business principles and reminders. And then the other two, I think, Built to Sell and Work the System are both really good.
Here's one you've probably not heard of yet.
Okay, let's hear it.
It could be a little bit interesting. It's, can you see it? Yeah, it's What They Don't Teach You at Harvard Business School, which I was just reminded because you said you actually haven't learned that much in your MBA program. That's by Mark McCormack. It's a total classic. I think it was first published in, let me look it up, I think it's even earlier, 84, I guess. It's cool. It has some neat tricks. It's a cool way of thinking. I enjoyed reading it, so can recommend it.
I don't even think they have a Kindle version.
Probably not.
I don't see one. Yeah, I remember that book. I remember seeing that book before.
Okay, let's try to catch up with a couple of the questions.
Right.
Ryan is going off on a question spree here. So, yeah, he was basically, that's what he keeps asking here, is he finds it hard to find competitors before, like for an app idea, competitors that already exist, and then check out how they monetize. So Kevin was replying that it would be he should just go to the App Store and search for them, but then Ryan was saying that it's not coming up most of the time. So basically the thing is, you have an idea and you search for it on the App Store and you don't find anything, you're excited because you think you're the first one there. And then someone else 2 weeks later you talk to them about your idea and they say, well, that already exists and it's called this and that. So how do you validate your ideas is basically the question.
You want me to answer that one? So what I would say is, well, there's a couple of thoughts. One, if you can't find a competitor on the App Store, but people are saying one exists, then I would say, okay, well, there's one competitive advantage. You're going to be found on the App Store. But I would be careful with this is something I learned early on, and David and I talk about it a lot. You know, I talk about it a lot is, oh man, there's no other apps like this. I'm going to be so rich. It's like, well, or there's no opportunity there, right? So it's one or the other. The converse is that, oh, that idea already exists and I can't do it. It's like, no, that's validation that it's something to build on.
That was my first thought as well.
Yeah, it's kind of counterintuitive, but it definitely has proven out in my experience. And so, like right away, the Lions Club, Rotary Club. Oh, sorry, Ryan, you probably don't want me to talk about it. Well, I would say that those people are probably older members, and they might not have there might not be early adopters of smartphones and apps and all that stuff, so maybe that's why that doesn't exist. But remember, opt-in mobile, this email collection tool, nothing existed like that either. And I said, screw it, I'm going for it. So
yeah, but then you did some other validation, right? You just pre-sold it, so that's also
pre-sold it.
validation.
Yeah,
I think that's important. A really important point, actually, to understand is that there might have been a time in the app stores where it was best to be first, and there were a lot of obvious opportunities, and there was just no one there. But I think those times are, if not gone, fading away. And so now it's more important, like in every other market, to have a market that works, to be in a market where there's a pre-existing cash flow rather than not having any competition. Because not having any competition in 99% of the cases means that there's no money to be made there. You know, there's this 1% where you discovered a gold mine, but it's so unlikely that I would, you know, you don't play the lottery either, right? Or at least you shouldn't. So I wouldn't play the lottery in that sense. I would just go into a market where there's some proven pre-existing cash flow.
Yes. And you know, I've used the example opt-in mobile as like, hey, that was total. I think people use the term blue ocean, but even the blue ocean, which the whole analogy is that you're going into somewhere where no one else is. It's like a wide open ocean. Like visualize that. That's how uncompetitive it is. Even that is built off the premise or the idea that you're riffing off another idea, right? There's so little competition, yet you're taking another idea and improving it. Like that's how much space there is in between ideas, right? And so if you're going somewhere where there's nothing, like it's almost like, think of it as the desert, where at least the ocean has life and there's things going on, and the desert has nothing going on, right? Yeah. So that's probably a terrible thing, and I'm going to use an excuse that I'm sick. That's why I came up with that. But the idea is that they talk about the blue ocean as being a wide open place where you can't see another living thing, another competitor anywhere, yet it's still a pivot from something else. So that's what I would say opt-in mobile was. Opt-in mobile was, hey, look, all these guys that are just recreating their their WordPress sites or their blogs or podcasts, just putting it on mobile, are missing the opportunity. The opportunity is email collection. So that was my pivot. But if no one was putting their websites on mobile, I would be worried that I didn't have an idea, and I probably wouldn't have had an idea. So I would, I think that building a framework for different clubs is an idea, definitely. The question is, get there, fail fast, like fail really fast. Mock it up, go to the club, ask them if they'll pay for it, if they want to charge the membership for it or use it to advertise their events, and be done with it. And if it resonates, do that for 10 clubs. And if no one picks it up, then no one wants it, and move on to the next idea.
I think what I would be skeptical about, and I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, I'm just saying you should definitely consider it, the difference between something like opt-in mobile and going after, for example, I had once upon a time the idea to do a framework for restaurant apps where that wasn't that common yet. And the point is that when you really think about it and when you really get into the details of how you could implement it, there's some serious managing of relationships and people and all that kind of stuff involved. And it just takes incredible amounts of time. And then, on the other hand, restaurants often don't have that much money. So the question really is how big the opportunity is in there. Where with opt-in mobile, it's pretty much an automated process where people come to you, they find you, they see your ads, or at least they Google it, and they find you, and then they buy. And there's no personal relationship that needs to be maintained, and you don't need to do phone calls or maybe even drive somewhere to your customers. So it's a much more frictionless business model. So that was probably one of my worst ideas, Ryan. Ryan also asked what my favorite apps are from the developer perspective. Well, funny you should ask. Actually, of course, I'm using something like Twitter app, so I'm using Tweetbot because I like it better than Twitter. and I'm using Mailbox for my emails because it allows me to get email done very quickly, and have a boomerang feature as well, where I can schedule emails for another day, etc. I'm using Instacast for my podcasting needs, and I'm using Sleep Cycle as an alarm clock, which is awesome because it wakes you up just at the right time. And I'm using Threema for messaging. I think, yeah, and Evernote, but Evernote is really bad app. I just use it because,
really?
yeah, the desktop is. I mean, Evernote as a whole product is great, but the individual apps actually suck most of the time. So
Dave, we lost you right when you had a funny face, or I don't know if everyone else did, but the screen lost you right when you had this weird expression. Okay, Evernote sucks. The desktop's good. That's what you said.
basically, yeah.
Yeah.
Chris, your favorite mockup apps?
Uh, Google presentation, like their version of PowerPoint. That's what I use. I used to use Balsamiq and some of these others, but I just don't. You don't. I like. There used to be some mock-up tools that left it very bare, like to show that this wasn't the design. The button isn't a square yet. We don't know that
Yeah.
it's a square. It's just a button, and so I like that it's so bare.
Mm-hmm.
If you're the first timer, you got to remember back buttons. And in fact, there's a question I just saw in our Facebook group about like how much detail do you put in when you're mocking up an app. Well, I would say that you should know of every single function and button, like know it cold. Like it's not for the developer to like come up with what the functionality is. It's
Yeah.
just making it translate your vision into code. Um, but yeah, I just use Google Mockup. I mean, Dave and I trade when we trade our Macromania thoughts. It's on a Google what is that tool called? PowerPoint, whatever
Yeah,
PowerPoint is.
Google presentation, I think.
Yeah.
So the thing is, I actually do like certain apps called prototyping on paper, which allows you to just actually, I think I have a pretty strong opinion. I think you should use this kind of a pencil or
We
marker.
call it marker. Yeah.
It's a flip chart marker actually, so it's really thick, and that's what you should use, because you shouldn't pay so much attention to the nitty-gritty details when you start thinking about the concept of the ad. And prototyping on paper allows you to then connect buttons to other screens, and you have some basic functionality, basic navigation. But I've also realized that with the particular technology that we're using, we can make prototypes, especially regarding the UI, so quickly that it often makes more sense just to throw something out there and see if it sticks. And that's what we've been doing with our app. And then we go to more detailed mock-ups in the presentations, in the Google presentations. Yeah. Okay, is Apple Newsstand dead? I don't have anything in the Newsstand. I don't think Chris has either.
Yeah,
So,
but I still have a goal for creating a magazine at some point, whether that's related to the app as
okay.
a podcast or something. So I don't think that the eMag idea is dead by any means. I think maybe just that. I'm
But
trying to think
Newsstand
of.
in particular, the Newsstand mechanism of publishing, or the Newsstand app, I think seems to be dead. And if you read
Yeah.
what Gruber's saying, then you get a pretty good idea. And not that Gruber's is the best source for everything, but I actually think of Gruber as an outlet of the Apple marketing department. And even, if even Gruber is saying it's dead, then it actually seems to be pretty dead. So,
And let me
but it's
make
just
sure.
my opinion.
Yeah, and so basically the newsstand is just like the app store for um, ebooks and e-magazines, right? Or not books, just magazines. So basically, it'll just be like they'll be available somewhere else. The platform, the idea behind all that stuff isn't going anywhere. That thing's growing like crazy. I don't know about. I've never. In fact,
Mhm.
that was actually one of the reasons why I slowed my eMag down idea down is because it felt like God, I don't want to have to bury it in the newsstand. That's too far away from where I want it to be. And it just kind of like kept slipping down the priority list. And now we're working on other stuff. But I still think there's a real opportunity there in magazines.
Yeah. So Vishal just shared another app for prototyping. It's called envisionapp.com.
Mm-hmm.
And I've seen this before. This is more like designer focused on designers. It's pretty cool, but it's also very complex, in my opinion. And I don't know what you think, Chris, but I think for and especially for mobile apps, and maybe if they are not that complex, this might be a little overkill. So I would still prefer going with a really basic mock-up, like prototyping on paper, and then creating a real prototype rather than using something like this, which is a little bit in between for me.
Well, what I found when I was starting all this was just give me tons of options and let me figure it out, because who knows what resonates with people. So
Right, it might
Balsamiq,
be, yeah.
yeah. So Balsamiq was one that's really well known. Envision, I've seen it before, and yeah, that is a good one, and it's beautiful. I mean, it's yeah, that's a really well made. I don't know if it's funded or paid or how they make money, but it's obviously they're doing something right. That's envisionapp.com, and then there's the very sophisticated Google presentation and pen and paper.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
And then real quick, just because we're telling everyone, Adrian just shared NinjaMock. NinjaMock.com is another one. Hey, if you wonder what we're talking about in this chat thing that we're talking about, every Friday at 9 a.m. at 10 a.m. Eastern, we have a ABP Weekly Live, so you can go to abpweekly.com, and you'll see there's a chat box below, and there's a video at the top, and so you can push play and listen to us rap, and then you can chat below each other and all that kind of stuff. So it started with 2 people, and now we got 7 today. I think that might be our high. I don't know, maybe last week was 7 too. But yeah, so that's what's going on. But now that we're publishing these as podcasts as well, just because we figure why not.
Yeah. What I love about this is actually that
maybe it gets more interesting.
Lost you there. Okay, so what I love about this is that that we can do these Q&As. So if more people would come on with some questions that they want to ask us, and it doesn't have to be topical, like can be all whatever you think and whatever you want to know from the App Business Podcast. You can of course also write us an email and ask us questions that way. But if you think it's just a quick question or something that we could talk about live, and you might have a follow-up question, then that's the format. That's where you want to go. abpweekly.com, and every Friday we can have a quick Q&A here, and I really enjoy it.
And if we don't know, and if we don't know, we'll go figure it out and do a podcast episode on it. I mean, that's kind of what we use it for too. Is like there's lots of stuff we don't know, and it's like, yeah, we have that question too. So that makes it for a great podcast episode. It forces us to go figure it out. And then share it with everyone. So,
all right, I think we're done for today. It was a pretty long but very good weekly for me, at least. Hope to talk to you soon, Chris, and let's record some more episodes.
Yeah, hopefully that's tomorrow, but we'll talk offline about when we're going to do that. But yeah, thanks guys for joining us, and we'll talk to you next Friday.